Whether the guy's wearing a janitor's uniform or he's wearing a postal uniform or he's wearing a police uniform or fire, the guy deserves respect. You know, his big thing was treat the janitor better than you treat the CEO.
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
Fear can be a very valuable weapon. The size of the destruction can pale in respect to the emotional impact. The psychological battlefield is fought within the hearts and minds of the intended target. Optics are every bit as important in a battle plan as a bullet. Through media and global attention, perceptions are rapid fire through the outlets. It's hard to escape the bombardment, attempting to wade through and find the truth. Showing fear in the face of terrorism ensures their victory. A terrorist will attempt to win the war through maximum visibility. The only defense is resilience and the strength to continue and fight. I'm Kevin Donaldson here with Mike Felice, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. If you're a fan of overcoming adversity and overcoming suffering, then we're for you, because that's what we do here and that's the stories we highlight. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, please comment, ring the bell so you can get notified of all of our new content. Now you can join. Follow us on all social media so you can find out what we're up to. On this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we have somebody traveling all the way from the city, another friend of Tom Smith.
Upstate New York.
Upstate New York. Angel Maysonet, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me, boys. Appreciate you.
So I asked, when Tom was in here one day, and I'm like, Tom, do you know this guy? Do you know Big Rican Man? Do you know who he is? He's like, oh yeah, he's like a brother to me. He's like, okay, we're good now.
Yeah.
Before we get into anything, let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody as police, but we do trust them. So go to toyotahackensack.com and let them find you a car. They keep the lights on. Let's support them.
They keep my father moving too. his little Toyota that he got from him.
I just got 2 more people in there. So listen, I'm trying to do right by them. So Angel, each week we take a question from our audience. This question comes from final_countdown. Now you were a cop, and cops have to get out of their own mind, so you develop some sort of hobby. So Final Countdown writes, what was your hobby you developed in your career that helped you de-stress? You're our guest tonight, so I'm going to pass this one off to you.
I moved upstate, right? I moved to Orange County.
So the story behind that is if you live in upstate New York, you will differentiate yourself from those who live in the city.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and like I told you guys before, right? Growing up in the Bronx, upstate for me was Westchester County, right? Yonkers was upstate for me. That was my accent, Yonkers.
My Yankees.
My Yonkers, city of Yonkers.
It's easy to slide back into
right,
it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So I moved about 70 miles north of the Bronx when my daughter was born. And it was about an hour and 15-minute ride. So my de-stress time was just looking forward to getting home to her, right? I'm a big music guy. I listen to everything from jazz, to country, to my salsa, merengue, bachata, my freestyle music. So I'm a big music guy. Just listening to music and thinking about my baby girl and getting home to her in one piece.
Well, what'd you do when you get home, like on your days off and stuff? Did you develop any hobbies? You play golf or something?
So, I hit the gym. I mean, in spite of what you see, right? I was in the gym. Back then, I'd get on video games, every once in a while. I tried to, and it's a lot harder now, right, with social media and the world we live in. I tried to get away from the job and leave the job and flush what I went through, because I worked in a pretty shitty neighborhood. A lot of tragedy I witnessed, a lot of poverty, a lot of stuff growing up, same stuff that I went through. And just kind of de-stressing doing that, I'd go for long drives again, right? Drives. My dog at the time, I adopted a pit bull from the Bronx, right? Cliche as it is, right? It's the truth. I adopted, he was actually American Staffordshire. His name was Duke. He was 110 pounds. He was a big boy. I got him on a radio run, and I took him home, and I spent a lot of time with him. He helped me.
Yeah, you know what? You get involved in your pet's life. Like I've always done that with my pets, because no matter what kind of shitty day, they don't care. They're just happy to see you.
Absolutely.
I always said, no matter how bad your day was, my dog always ran up and pissed on my feet when I got home.
Yeah, that's right.
That's how happy the dog was.
Hi, Daddy, I love you. Here you go.
Now you got to get your girlfriend to piss on your feet.
Little golden shower action. That's it.
So aside from Pornhub, Mike, what was your hobby when you were working?
really, like you said, I mean, music is always an outlet.
Yeah.
To me, it was just a lot of running. I used to do a lot of running back in the day, and that was just to clear my mind. I wouldn't wear headphones. I wouldn't do anything like that. I just go out and run, see the scenery, and
well, there's a point when you're running, and I know this, that you just start, like, your senses become very awakened. Like, you hear everything around you. And with headphones in, it sort of drowns it out. Headphones are good if you're doing like a mile, but when you start getting into the upper miles, like the 6 mile plus, you start getting in that zone. It's a great place to sit.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And going to the gym, working out, just, kind of the healthy habits, I guess.
Yeah.
Because the other habit, well, not a habit, but, the other thing, you fall into the bottle once in a while. Have a couple drinks, and my father always told me, never try to drink your problems away, because the problem's going to be there tomorrow, and you're going to be hungover.
That's right. Amen.
So that was one of my hobbies afterwards. It was drinking. And I was fully committed to my hobby.
Yeah. Go hard or go home, right?
So I would go out in my garage, and like my garage was my sanctuary, and I would just create things. I do a lot of woodworking. I enjoyed working with wood because you have to stay totally focused on what you're looking at, and you can create something out of nothing. You have this rough piece of wood, and like I created I made the bed, the headboard for my bed, out of just reclaimed 2x4s, and it's got a very unique look to it. So when you do that and you finish a project like that, you feel very accomplished. But then, like everything else, you're on to the next thing. Or I'd work with metal or just create little things. I just needed something, and I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time on it, but an hour, 2 hours in the garage, that was my personal de-stress time. Just I would tell my wife, just give me a couple hours,
right?
All right, and thankfully she would.
Thank goodness.
So, final countdown. Thank you so much for sending in your question. Keep sending in your questions. We will try to get them on air. And while you're sending in your questions, why don't you visit one of our sponsors? That's Cubita Cafe. Go to 234 Franklin Avenue in Nutley. Mike.
Right, I was there today. It was fantastic.
That chef, Gus puts his heart and soul in everything.
He puts everything into it.
Yeah.
He's got a whole career as a chef behind him. He's got the staff there is very attentive, and the sandwiches were fantastic. They had a marinated steak sandwich that I had today. Ooh. One of the guys had a Cuban sandwich. We had some empanadas. Oh, forget it.
So he one of the things with Gus is he refuses to lower himself and buy the pre-made empanada. Yep. So he makes all the stuff from hands.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So Absolutely. You put that love and it shines through.
100%.
Yeah. So check out
well worth the trip.
Check out Cubita Cafe at 234 Franklin Avenue and help them get the word out. I want everybody just to go there at least once, and you'll be a fan. So Angel. We've been watching you on social media for quite a while. We got introduced through a mutual friend, Tom Smith from Gold Shield Show. He says mostly good stuff about you. Mostly good stuff.
The check cleared.
Yeah, that's it.
So one of the things I'm really jealous about is your man cave that you created.
Yeah.
You got I don't know if you saw it, Mike. He's got football helmets back there. He's got the blue flag. He got something similar to this back there, right?
Yeah.
Was that something that you had to have after retirement?
So
the recliner. Forget about the recliner.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I want.
So it was, but it took a while, right? I needed that space. I'm a big, sports fan. I'm not one of these guys. And
I thought you said you were a Cowboys fan.
I am.
That's not a sports fan.
Well, I'm a Yankees fan too.
There you go. Kevin's not.
Yeah. So,
Strike two.
It was important for me to have that. It took me a while to build up my collection. I'm not one of these guys. There's a lot of people who I don't watch the NFL. I don't watch basketball. I don't watch this. I'm not one of those guys. I love my sports. And it's my sanctuary. I finally got my wife to allow me to smoke cigars down there once in a while.
Wow.
I got a nice air purifier system hooked up. That's my little sanctuary. She had a quarter of it. Because God forbid she gives me the whole thing from the beginning, right? Because the whole house is her woman cave.
Well, if you get divorced, she's not only getting a quarter, bro.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. Listen, this is wife number 2. There ain't gonna be a wife number 3. So I already been through it. Yeah, she took a quarter of it, and then she gave me. Finally, I got the blessing to, once I got my bathroom built down there, she was like, you know what, just take the whole man cave, and I was like, yes.
I think women are really scared to do that with us because you get home from a long day. You know, obviously you were NYPD. You get home from a long day. You saw something really bad. You're likely to go down there and sit in there all night.
Yeah.
You know, and if there's a bathroom down there.
Oh, forget about it. You got everything you need.
And a refrigerator?
You got a cooler.
Goodbye.
That's it. Yeah.
So how many times you slept in a chair? It's not a big deal.
Right. So full disclosure, I didn't have that man cave until recently. I didn't have that house until recently, right? When I went through, and we may get into this later, we may not, but when I went through my first divorce, my only divorce, thank God. Hopefully my only divorce.
We're still waiting on the
right,
second.
Exactly. When I
The
went
jury's
through,
still out.
When my first marriage ended, I was broke as hell. So I had no man cave. I had no home. I went through it for a long time. So
It's a scary place to be because you got a job that you're making at NYPD. You're making okay money.
Yeah.
But you're still broke.
Yeah.
Now, we got friends like we got friends that we both know that are making on paper huge amounts of money.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But they're broke
Huh?
because ex-wives got it all and child support and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
So
I'll stay out of that conversation.
There you go.
where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in the Bronx. I'm
Angel
a Bronx
from the
boy.
Bronx,
Yeah,
okay.
that's right. I'm a Bronx boy, born and raised. I lived on 203 in the Grand Concourse. I lived on Morris Avenue when I was a baby, 183rd and Morris in the 4-6. My grandparents lived in the Patterson houses over by Lincoln Hospital. That was my summer home, right? The projects. That was my, with the roaches and the piss in the elevators and all that stuff. And on the Grand Concourse, I used to hang out on Morris Avenue, 197th Street by Lehman College, and I'm a Bronx boy.
The Bronx is the one borough that is sort of getting left behind.
Yeah.
Even Harlem now. Harlem is becoming, all there's no more brownstones in Manhattan.
Right.
So I saw this when I ran the 2006. This is how long ago it started. 2006 New York Marathon. Mm-hmm. And you're always you have a little trepidation about running through Harlem because you've heard things.
Right.
And I'm running through and I'm like, boy, this doesn't seem like the Harlem that I heard about.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, it's really just sections, isn't it?
It is. Unfortunately, right? All the Malcolm X boulevards and the Martin Luther King boulevards are unfortunately the ones that are, in a blasphemous way, they're filled with the worst crime, unfortunately. So, I mean, that's basically where it happens, the bad stuff at that time. Now, to your point, Harlem's no longer Harlem like it used to be.
They're trying to bring it back because Harlem had its heyday.
Right,
in the 20s, 30s.
Yeah.
It was high class. And it was still a black neighborhood.
Yeah, sure.
But it was it had an air of class to it.
Yeah, 100%.
You went for a night out in Harlem.
Yeah. They had the Apollo, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it went downhill for so long.
It did.
But I don't understand why the Bronx is still trying to catch up with the rest of the 5 boroughs.
So, in my opinion, the main reason for that is that as Hispanics, right? Because the Bronx is predominantly Puerto Rican and Dominican, right?
Yep, absolutely.
As Hispanics, we kind of left out of the, we were kind of left out of the black causes, right? The Black Lives Matter and all that other stuff. And then we were kind of left out of the white causes, whatever you want to say. So we were kind of stuck in the middle.
Right.
So since it's predominantly a Hispanic neighborhood, the Bronx, Puerto Ricans and Dominicans and Hispanics, for the most part, we mind our business. Right, we mind our business.
Those neighborhoods are the best to go into because they're the most alive.
Right,
believe it or not.
We want to work hard. We're big into family. We mind our business. We don't complain. We don't play victim. So there's a lot of pride that's involved with that and keeping like my in-laws still live in the Bronx and they have a 4-family house in the Bronx that's been paid off for years. And my father-in-law was a bodeguero. He owned the bodegas his whole life. And the man came from Puerto Rico when he was 11 years old, and he's been busting his ass his whole life, and he worked to raise 5 girls, So it has a lot to do with pride and keeping kind of that, the Latin flavor in the borough,
I really like what you said that Puerto Ricans don't seem to play the victim because when you grew up, and by the way, I checked his age. He's 53.
Yeah, I know.
That's
Here we
right.
go.
Okay, I checked his age.
I think Spam's the only thing older than me in here.
Puerto Ricans weren't viewed very favorably in this country. Mm-hmm. That has since changed, by the way. In my opinion, that has since changed. But I remember, I've said this on the show before, I remember growing up, and my grandparents lived in an area where one of the sections was heavy Puerto Rican. Yeah. And I was told, stay away from Puerto Ricans.
You're forbidden to go.
Yeah. Well, look at West Side Story, right? It was Jets and the Sharks. It was Puerto Ricans against the Irish.
So it's changed. I don't know whether that has something to do with the natural ebb and flow of immigrants into this country. You know, Irish were looked at poorly, Italians were looked at poorly, but they found their way.
Yeah, sure.
So I think Puerto Ricans may have just found their way in this and become really immersed into American culture.
Yeah, as you know now, right? We're a territory, so we're all, United States citizens, even on the island. The thing is, we were looked at as immigrants because we came here. And just like the Mexicans of the world and the Guatemalans of the world and the Salvadorians of the world and the Dominicans of the world, we didn't speak the language, right? So you come here and you have to assimilate. You have to work hard. My grandfather came here, right? He was like 10 years old and he came here from Puerto Rico on his own because his older sister lived here and he came to live with her. And he joined the Army. He was in the Merchant Marines and he worked his way up.
That's the big difference.
They are hard. We talk about it all the time. Hard workers that come over here.
That's the big difference right there. You just hit the nail on the head because this was something that failed, even with it going back as far as when the Italian immigrants came in there. You had, like, my wife's grandmother. She's been in this country 70 years before she passed. Couldn't speak English. What does the matter with you? You live in a country that's predominantly English speaking. But I think when Puerto Ricans came over, they picked up English very quickly. Because they knew.
Because they had to.
Yeah, they knew. Yeah. This is how I'm going to make my way in this country.
Right, that's it. And my grandfather was, Thomas Forner, may he rest in peace. He was a huge, right, because my dad wasn't around. So my grandfather, he was a nasty old ornery man, but for me, he was my man example. So he was super hardworking. He was a huge politician, right? He was a big politician back in, the Kennedy days, the Mayor Koch days in New York. My mother has pictures of him having dinner at Gracie Mansion, right, with Mayor Koch. He was a very outspoken, right? Maybe that's where I get it from. But he was just a tough, hardworking dude that took care of his family, and
you can't ask for more than that.
That's it. That's all he wanted, Heavy drinker. It's in my lineage, right? The problems with alcohol. So that was one of his kind of downfalls, so to speak. But he lived till he was 85 years old, so he did okay.
That work ethic that was instilled in you by your grandfather, that's what sort of led you on the straight and narrow and into eventually the NYPD?
Yeah, he was a very big proponent of a uniform, right? His thing was whether the guy's wearing a janitor's uniform or he's wearing a postal uniform or he's wearing a police uniform or fire, the guy deserves respect. His big thing was treat the janitor better than you treat the CEO. And that was always his mantra. He was a unique dude. He would take me, we would go to there was a bodega underneath the dentist, on the bottom of a dentist building, on 143rd and Morris and 3rd Avenue over that area. And we would go and we would walk by that, and it was a bodega, and we would go play the numbers, right? He would play his numbers, and then we would walk down to 149th. He would take me to Banco Popular, the bank. He didn't have a bank account. He used to keep his money in a safe deposit box. So he would make me count. This was like every other day. He would make me take the safe deposit box out and count his money in front of him. He would tell me, this is hard-earned money. I want you to count it. I want you to make sure I have the same amount of money that was there.
The smell of it.
Right. And then we would walk down to the methadone clinic, and he would make me sit there for about 15, 20 minutes and watch the drug addicts, zoning out, doing the matrix. And he would always tell me, this is what's going to happen to you if you did drugs. This is, if they hit the ground, they'll die. That was his thing. Because, they were like, they would bend over and that lean and they would never fall.
Their head was by their knees.
Right.
They never fell.
So, he sounds like a great man now.
Oh, he was, and my mother has different stories. And so does my uncle, may he rest in peace. And so does my aunt. My grandfather had different stories because he was different, right? They were his kids and his wife, and he was different with them. But with me, as hard as he was, I'm a very affectionate dude, right? Ever since I was a kid, I would always try to give him a kiss, and I would hold his face, and he was afraid I was going to try to kiss him on the lips, but I would kiss him on the nose, the forehead. I was always like that as a kid. He would watch baseball with me. He had his newspapers piled up. He was a great man, but he was tough.
But it's what you needed.
Yeah.
Do you think he was tough because he didn't want to see you hit the streets?
I think that he was tough because he had a hard childhood, right? And his thing was he'd go, in the Merchant Marines, he'd go away for 6 months, and then he'd come back, and the checks will come in, and he'd come back, and then he'd drink, and then he'd get, he'd take it out on everybody. And then after he became, because when I was born, he was already in his 60s, right? So he was very at that point, he had obviously calmed down a little bit as far as, the hitting went. And
plus
the
his
violence.
grandson.
Right.
So,
and at the time I was his only grandson, he just gravitated to me. We watched baseball. Like I said, I would sit in his recliner and watch the Yankees with him. And he was just very, he was always, he knew my father wasn't around, obviously, right? My mother was busting her ass working. Single mom, right? Bronx, you name it. And
but he saw too many kids like you, fatherless.
Absolutely.
Like you said, hit the streets. You get lost in the system.
And I wasn't with him all the time. Like I told you, it was kind of funny, but it was kind of true. That was like my summer home. I would spend the summers with them, a lot of the weeks in the summer when my friends were going to Puerto Rico. My grandparents were here. So that was my summer. I would spend with him and my abuela, and I'd be in the projects with them.
But he wasn't with you all the time, but you were with, reverse that. You weren't with him all the time, but he was always with you.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. But how did that transition into a police career?
So it was always the uniform thing, right? Get a uniform. Get a uniform. Which
I think is an undervalued thing. Mike and I know we were big uniform guys.
Mm-hmm.
You were sharp, you were crisp.
100%.
And the new way of policing, because we've had people in here that have said this, and I don't agree with it. I don't care. There's no case they can make. When you see an officer step out of their vehicle or come up to you and they are crisp and squared away and everything's shining and the boots are polished, it disarms everybody.
Commands respect.
Yeah, that's half the battle right there. Yeah. Getting out of that RMP, right? We call RMPs. I get a lot of flack from my buddy who's a LAPD retired sergeant, Sal LaBarbera. He says, what the hell's an RMP? Well, anyway, we call it RMPs. Getting out of that RMP, when you get out and you are squared away, your shoes are shiny, your uniform doesn't have stains on it, your shirt, and you're looking like you mean business, that's half the battle. Plus, I'm 6'5", so, I mean, that didn't hurt,
Yeah, that's a nice little command process.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But now you take your height and you take your uniform, and that was a big thing. Mm-hmm. How old were you when you got the job?
21.
Oh, you were fresh.
Yeah, I was a little baby.
You were a baby. That's good.
I had hair. My Hector Lavoie glasses, like they like to say, right? My BCs, my birth control glasses. Yeah. They were. I was 21, man. I was 21. I turned 22 in the academy.
Was the job what you thought it was going to be? Like, what was the draw to being a cop?
So I was like we like to say in the NYPD, I was full of piss and vinegar, right? I wanted to hit the ground running. I was like ready to save the, as corny as it sounds.
Wanted to make a change.
Yeah, I'm Puerto Rican. These are my people, right? Because I grew up in a 5'2", and I ended up working in a 4'8". Now, I didn't know where I was going. When I went and I swore in, I was in midnight class, January 30th, 1992. We were sitting in Brooklyn Tech High School. It was 150 degrees, and we were in suits. And you raised your right hand, and then you walked the gauntlet, and it was like housing, transit, PD, housing, transit, PD, because they were 3 separate departments at the time. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I don't want to go into trains. Right? I don't want to work the subways, and I don't want to work in housing projects. I spent enough time in a housing project. I want to be on the street, running around in the cars. And sure as shit, I got my PD. I got PD, and I was ready to hit the ground running. Right? I ended up finding I was going on to the 4'8", and I'm like, I'm gonna help. These are my folks, right? These are my people. I'm gonna help Puerto Ricans. I'm gonna make a difference in the community where I, 4 miles from where I grew up.
And when you got that job, how did the neighborhood look at you?